I'm sorry, but it was. What's up, you wild Fruit Loops? This is a very serious and a more personal video talking about my sickness, depression, all these things I went through within a year, 2 years. This may be new to a lot of people. I don't want people to feel sorry for me from the story. The whole point of my story is to really just help everyone else out. I really believe this can help a lot of you suffering from certain things you're going through. Keep in mind, it's not foolproof. It's just my experience. So take that as it is. I have my little binder or whatever that I kept all my hospital and tests, all that stuff. This is to remind me of what I went through and kind of give me like an outline of my story. Let's jump right into it. It all started with one day, just a regular day. I woke up one morning. And this is around the same time that I've been eating very healthy, no fast food, nothing like that. And one day I was like, you know what, like let's start exercising on top of it. You know, we've been eating healthy, let's do some exercising, you know, maybe get some muscle tone, you know, just kind of the right things you would expect. Out of nowhere, one morning I woke up and I felt a lot of pressure in my head. This was around the year, I think it was 2012, 2013. Can't remember, those years flew by fast, you know, when you're bedridden sick. So I woke up one morning, I felt pressure in my head, and I felt really nauseous. Then I was gonna go have my usual breakfast, and I realized, oh my God, it's so hard to eat. I'm so nauseous. What's wrong with me? And I felt like this tension in my stomach, my throat, my mouth. I felt this tension that it felt like my body just didn't want to eat food. It didn't want to accept food. It's like, okay, that's weird. And I felt so bad. It got worse. My head, the pressure, the dizziness, the nausea got so bad that anything I put into my body, I was throwing up. Even when I tried to force myself to eat because, you know, I was starving. Like I was so hungry, my stomach's gurgling, and I'm like, I know I need food. But as soon as I smelled anything, any kind of food, my body rejected it, and it was really difficult for me to eat it. I was like, I gotta force myself or something. Anyway, just felt sick. Now, the following months after this are kind of a blur. One thing led to another, and it was kind of like a domino effect. Disclaimer, we're going to go into a little bit of personal symptoms. I don't want to gross you guys out, but we're going to go there. I'm going to try to keep this video as short as I can. So it all started from one random day. Like I said, there was nothing. It wasn't like I was out drinking one night or anything like that. It was just one random day. The symptoms just started. After that, it just got worse. I tried to deal with a few symptoms like how you would normally deal with them, you know, Advil or take some vitamin C, you know, things like that. It just got worse. My nausea was bad. My head was bad. There were moments where I couldn't even like walk in a straight line because I felt like gravity shifts in my head. A lot of really odd symptoms as well. So I went to a few doctors to do some analyzing and blood work and, you know, that kind of stuff. So when I went, they said everything checked out, meaning I was completely fine. They said, you're good. Everything is perfectly fine. And I thought, well, gee, I really thought there would be something wrong with me, you know, because I just feel so bad. And they're like, well, we can refer you to, you know, a GI specialist or someone who deals with, you know, the head pain and all that stuff. I said, okay. Fast forwarding to a few hospital visits, I got a report from multiple doctors. I went to multiple hospitals just to see what people say. You know, one doctor said, oh, your vitamin D is really low. Another guy said, oh, we're seeing some stuff wrong with your kidneys. You know, I did the ultrasound. I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's my kidney because I ran a lot of tests. You know, my kidneys started hurting. I had shooting pains. I had muscle spasms. Keep in mind, this wasn't all at like one day. This was weeks after weeks. When I tried to do things to get better, I actually got worse. So the nausea was persistent, the headaches, the dizziness. Then I got pains around my body. I felt really tired all the time, lack of energy, wasn't sleeping right. And then I felt out of nowhere, you know, then started muscle spasms. So I'm trying to film, I'm trying to do some YouTube stuff, and I think you guys might have noticed this was around the time where I wasn't posting a lot of videos because I was dealing with my sickness. There's a few videos I posted where I was horribly sick, but I still wanted to put something out there, and I tried to hide that sickness. And I did that when I was hanging out with friends or when my family relatives came to see me. They knew I was sick. They could tell it when they looked right in my face, right in my eyes. But I tried to make it seem like it wasn't that bad. So here's an unbelievable part of Western medicine. Here's an unbelievable thing I learned. I went to everybody and I said, "Doctor, look, there's this gnawing pain here. It's gnawing, it's clawing, it's burning. There's like this really bad physical pain here, and it's keeping me up at night." Doing my own Google research, I found it could be multiple things. Never self-diagnose, by the way. Don't do that. It's the worst thing ever. Don't go on Google. Don't type the pains I'm feeling and what it could be. Because Google's all about, like, you can type anything and it'll be like, you have cancer, you're going to die. Self-diagnose, it's the worst thing. And it scares you, so don't do it. But I went to, a GI specialist. He deals with everything internal right here. The pain I was feeling was right here. And I was like, I'm feeling this pain. It's keeping me up at night. I have a feeling it could be gastritis, from my research. He sat me down on a bed, and this is like this is like a good guy, like in a nice area, nice hospital, in a nice doctor's office, a nice area. And he starts pressing onto my stomach, and he says, "Does this hurt? Does that hurt?" He did some pressing and like that, whatever. I said, no, it's kind of, inside there, whatever. And then he said, "Oh, you're fine. Just stay away from spicy foods and whatever." I'm like, that's it? Like, where do I go from here? And he's like, "Well, I can prescribe you some nausea medication and all that stuff." And I'm like, yeah, you and every other doctor. Why is every other doctor they just want to prescribe me medicine? So I was feeling short of breath, another symptom that tops on, right? I felt that my heart was irregular. Like, for some reason, like sometimes I feel my heart go fast and I like beat out of my chest. Then it goes soft and it won't beat for a second. Then it'll come back online. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I feel like I'm dying here, So I went to see another doctor. So I got ultrasound done. I got CAT scan done, CT, my head, because I had that worst pain that was going on, my neck, my dizziness, vertigo, all this stuff. And every single doctor office I went to, they said, "You're fine." Or they said, "It's anxiety." I heard that word a million times. And a lot of doctors told me, like, "Oh, do you have stress in school? Are you being stressed at home?" And I said, my life is fantastic. I don't think this is me waking up every day being anxious about nothing. These symptoms came on, and I'm doing the best I can to deal with them. I'm actually underplaying my symptoms, I'm worrying less than a normal person would. Again, keep in mind, this has now been a few months from the first day I woke up feeling sick. I could probably name you 100 symptoms I was having. Some of them are minor that I don't want to mention, like, I was getting hot flashes, not being able to sleep, pains in certain locations. There's some minor things that I'm not even going to get to. The major ones were horrible. One of my worst symptoms was like this lingering feeling of just awfulness. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I felt really like just life sucked out of me. Everything was bad, and like I felt fatigued. Not only that, my eyes, every time I looked at something, like objects that were kind of close in my vision, I was fine. As soon as I turned away and I looked at a much more open field, like outdoors area or inside a big mall, I immediately felt this like pressure go in my head, my eyeballs, dizziness, and I was like, whoa, and I literally had to look away and look at something close and look at things that are nearby. And I'm over here losing my mind. I'm thinking, what's going on? Let me try that again. And so, I'm looking at objects that are very close. I turn around and look at the mall, it's an open field, and I feel it. And I'm turning back and forth going like, oh my God, it's a vision? What is this? What's going on? It's a vision thing. I'm like testing it myself. I'm like, yeah, every time I look further out to open space, I feel horrible. And I'm telling doctors these symptoms, and they're sitting there going, I have no idea what that is. That doesn't give you hope. Definitely doesn't give you hope. So all they kept trying to say is anxiety, Then to another doctor, I went in and I said, look, one day, throughout my months of these symptoms appearing, and one day I wake up with a new symptom, right? I feel this immense pressure in my chest, and I felt like I have to take deep breaths because I'm not getting enough oxygen or something. And I'm like, what is going on? And it feels like there's an elephant's foot on my chest, a freaking wild elephant, just sitting down on my chest because it's comfy and it needs to sit down. The next day I thought it'd go away, and it didn't. It actually got worse. I think it had something to do with it, but there were nights where, believe it or not, my breathing started to get cut off. So I'm laying in bed, I'm trying to go to sleep, midnight, it'll come to like 1:30 a.m., and I'll wake up suffocating. So, I'm asleep, so I don't know, I don't have any memory of anything like that. I have memories of like being jolted awake from someone like suffocating, not someone, but like it felt like someone was suffocating me and I jolted awake. It's a sleep apnea thing, like where you stop breathing or something like that. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm Googling all these things. I found things talking about, sometimes your brain, that's supposed to send those subconscious signals to your lungs to have it obviously operate and, breathe for you while you're asleep. Sometimes those signals get cut off. Of course, that's nothing you want to read. And I'm like, what? You're telling me my brain is shutting down, my brain's not communicating, my lungs telling me to breathe while I'm asleep? Like, that's generally what it was, what I was reading. I'm over here like, that sounds like it's happening to me because I'm waking up 3 to 4 times at night, suffocating. So I'd be asleep, and I'd wake up and I'll go, and like I take a deep breath, and I'm like, like one of those movies, like they just pull out a guy from the water, they were like choking to tell them where they hid the diamonds, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those. And I'm waking up like, like out of my bed, like, and I have to breathe and calm down, be like, and I was scared to go back asleep because I hated waking up suffocating. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? So that would happen 2 to 4 times a night. Obviously, this isn't fun for me. And I'm not even going in detail about how horrible it is making appointments with doctors, scheduling all these times where I'm going to go in and be checked out by someone. It gives you hope because you're like, finally, like I'm seeing a doctor who said he can cure me or something like that. And you wait and it's like, oh, your next appointment is, next month. And I'm like, is there anything sooner? My breathing is being cut off. I can't sleep. I'm throwing up everything I eat. I have all these horrible symptoms. Like, I really can't wait that long. And they're like, well, that's the nearest, day. That's the closest day to you. Fine. Then the drive there and just being so out of it and waiting 4 hours and then 6 hours and finally seeing him and then doing the tests and then waiting another 4 weeks to get the results, only for him to look at the results and be like, well, you're pretty okay. We can prescribe you some anxiety medication and medication for your heart, for your regular heartbeat. We can prescribe you things for your breathing. We could prescribe you something for your nausea. The pain that you're feeling is separate, and then the dizziness you're feeling, and then the separate one for the headaches. And then I'm like, what's going on here? I'm dying. I'm 20 years old. I think I was like 20, 21 years old at the time. So I'm like, are you saying I'm dying? Like this is it for me? I'm gonna wake up every day popping like 7 pills a day? What kind of quality of life? Why would a doctor even recommend things like that to me? I'm 20 years old. You're gonna recommend me living and dealing with these symptoms by popping pills every day? Something's not right. And one thing I learned is that a lot of doctors, even ER rooms I've been in, nurses, they don't give a shit about me. That's the sad truth. I'm like, they don't care whether I live or die. Like, they'll come in the room and they'll be like, well, that's what we got for you. You could do this. And yeah, so we can prescribe you that. We'll go, okay, thanks, bye. Like they don't look at me. They don't listen to me. They just seem like they don't care. And believe me, I went to a lot of hospitals, a lot of rooms, a lot of doctor offices. And the frustrating part was like one doctor was like, are you sure you're not a drinker or a smoker? Because your pancreas, like it's looking so horrible. It's looking like of a person who does drink and smoke. I'm like, no, like I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't drink soda. I eat healthy and exercise. And they couldn't believe why I was feeling so bad. But one doctor said it could be your pancreas. One doctor said, there's a bit of things in your kidney. one thing after another that they tried to solve, and it didn't do anything. I've been on every test I can imagine. Like I said, the CT scans, they put me on a machine where I drink something and the machine flips me upside down, and they monitor how it's going through my system. They did everything. And at this point, I'm like this at this point. Sitting down, hours waiting for doctors. Let me tell you some of the crazy symptoms. Everything I ate, I threw up. Everything I ate, I threw up. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., I'd wake up and I'd throw up what I had for like dinner, And these were like regular things. I realized something. I realized, like meats that I ate, I was throwing up. I'm like, what am I, becoming a vegetarian? I don't have the enzymes in my stomach to digest meat anymore. Everything I ate, I threw up. The only things I ate that I did not throw up was homemade, salads, some fresh foods my mom would cook, ingredients she would buy at like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Whole Foods was the only place I went to where I got like, a sandwich, a sandwich or a soup or a salad that I was able to digest. And everything else I ate, I couldn't eat much, made me feel horrible. Severe bloating, couldn't move, a horrible nausea, horrible symptom. I can't even go through how many symptoms I had. It's been about 6, 7, 8 months. And I'm over here like, when am I going to get better? 8 months have passed and my symptoms have not only gotten worse, but I've gotten more. So keep in mind, I'm going downhill. There hasn't been a sliver of hope. There hasn't been like one thing someone has done for me or something a doctor has given to me or something a doctor has done where, it was, I saw a minor positive change in my symptom or me getting better. Nothing. Not one single thing. Not one little bump like, oh, that was kind of good. It just straight down day by day. One day, they decide to do esophagus, whatever that means. What is this? They went into my system. Here's a crazy story about this one. You want to hear one? I went to the ER because I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I need to go to the ER and just see someone. Sure enough, I waited 7 to 8 hours without seeing anybody. There's other people waiting, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need someone to cure me right now. I didn't want to make appointments. I just went to the ER. Believe it or not, I waited overnight. I got there around 3, 4 p.m. I waited 12 to 13 hours completely overnight. It was 5 a.m. the next morning I spent just in the waiting room of the ER until I was finally brought in by a doctor. I literally go in, I sit inside. He comes and sees me with some work he got that I had done earlier or something. I don't even remember. But he comes in, he's like, yeah, so I see that this and your vitamins are this, but otherwise you're doing good. And I'm like, look at me. Do I look like I'm doing good? And I described to him all the symptoms I'm having. He said they don't do anything like that in the ER. I would just have to schedule an appointment with another doctor who gives me medicine for my symptoms. So I'm over here at this point thinking, okay, Western medicine, unless you have a physical bullet wound or a stab wound or a broken bone that they can visibly see and cure, fantastic. That's what they do. If you don't have anything physically wrong, like they could see that your kidney, split in half or something like that. If they don't see anything like that, they're not going to do anything for you. A lot of doctors looked at, I was like, maybe it's my thyroid, maybe it's a hormonal disbalance, maybe it's something. And every time they looked at it, they said, no, you're all good. Because, see, you fall in the normal range. The range is like from 2.0 to 16.0. And I was 2.1. And they're like, yeah, you're still in the normal range, you're good. I'm like, but what if before I got sick, I was at like a 10.0? And now I'm at a 2, and that's why I'm feeling these symptoms. He's like, no, you're in the right range. I was like, okay, let's get some exploratory things done. One of the doctors, he was a GI specialist. They went in doing like that exploratory surgery research thing. It's when they literally go inside you, not open you up anymore, but they go inside you and take a look at your intestines, your stomach, your large intestine, all that stuff with a camera and all that to see what's going on. And I was like, sure, do it. Because I didn't care about money. I didn't care about anything besides getting better. So I go in, and there's this nurse there, and she goes, oh yeah, there's this new thing. They were doing this new thing where, they put me to sleep with an IV line or whatever. It's not the little gas mask anymore. It's not one of those. It's an IV. I was like, yeah, sure, sounds good. So I'm sitting there in the hospital bed. the nurse comes in and she was going to prep me for when they take me in the room and they do that whole like research thing. So they come in and she's like hooking me up to the IV and all this stuff. And she's like chatting while she's doing it, whatever. So she puts the needle in my vein and she connects like this cap. And at this point, I've had my blood taken maybe like 50 times. You know, it's nothing. I'm just like, yeah, here you go. You know, they take. So she jams it in me so hard, like so deep. I felt a really sharp pain. I was like, ah, like I literally let out a yell because I felt it shoot all the way up to like my shoulder, neck, and head. I was like, oh my God, that hurt. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a bit of it's a new thing we're doing here. And I was like, oh, I don't want to hear that. You know, it's a new thing you're doing here. Am I the first patient? Like, am I a test subject? Am I playing Portal again? A test subject? But she's like, oh, you know, you're it's a new thing we're doing. I'm like, okay, fine, great. She jams it in me, like, whatever, and then pulls a thing out. And she goes, oh, let me grab. And I'm over here just like laying on my side, not really paying attention. Then I feel it. I feel a nice kind of like, you know, running. I'm like, what the? I look over. My entire elbow is sitting in a pool of blood. And at this point, I'm like, oh, God. I was like, and I looked away because I was like, that was a little too much. I looked away going, oh my gosh, can we hurry this up? Like, that's a lot. And I'm just spurting. I'm just like spurting blood. I'm in a pool of blood and it's starting to drip all the way down to my armpits. The entire thing is blood. She left the thing. I don't know. Then she comes, puts the thing in, and then grabs a bunch of these, you know, paper towels to kind of like clean me up. She's cleaning out my arm. She's cleaning it out. And at this time, I'm getting kind of like sick looking at it. You know, I never got queasy looking at blood, but this was a lot. This was enough for me to be like, oh man. And I kind of looked away. And she's cleaning my arm and whatnot. She then puts all those like paper towels or whatever, like all the ones she used, and she was using more and more. The ones she used, she was just putting like on my stomach because I was laying down. She puts them like in front of me and I'm looking at him like soaked in. And I was like, all right, can we hurry this up, lady? Like, you know what I mean? Let's get this over. What's going on? She finally gets me cleaned up, hooks me up, whatever. Okay, you'll be on your way out. I was like, great. 5 minutes later, they roll me out and I was speaking with the surgeon guy there and the assistant, like whatever. They were asking me how I was doing and, you know, all this stuff. So whilst I was talking, they administered the drug or whatever it was to knock me out. I was like, okay. Whilst I was talking, the last thing I remember, I was like, oh yeah, and you know, I was trying to, I just knocked out. So that's when they stick a tube down your throat, and it goes down, and they do the whole camera thing, like whatever. And I'm thinking, you know, oh, it's an easy procedure. And I didn't care what they did to me. They could have been like, Robert, we're going to completely tear you open. Like, we're going to tear you open. Your rib cage we're going to split your rib cage open like this, like Saw status, to see what's wrong with you. I would have been like, sure. Because I was so sick and so mentally drained and feeling so horrible, dealing with this entire lingering feeling of I'm sickly, I can't do anything, I can't live life normally, that I just wanted to get better. I just need to get better, so do whatever you need. Then I remember, I have a faint memory. Get this is crazy. I have a memory of waking up during the procedure. So as I felt myself kind of waking up, like, you know, I'm under the drug they've given me. And I remember, I distinctly remember waking up, not fully, I'd say like 25 or 30% of me was awake because my eyes are still closed. And I start hearing voices. I start hearing background voices, and I know, oh, it's the doctor and like the other assistant, whatever, the people in the background, like they're kind of just chatting, and I hear them, and I semi-feel, and it's very weird, I semi-feel my mouth like as I'm like just open with like that plastic like thing with my jaw, I think it was dislocated or something, like in my mouth, I feel it like in my mouth. And I was laying there like this, and I was like, holy crap. It was extremely weird, and I think I fell into a deeper sleep and started to not remember that anymore. The voices finally went away. My mouth was like open or whatever. Anyway, I wake back up. Slowly, I start waking back up. And they're like, okay, you're done. You're all good. We'll have a wheelchair out for you, and we'll roll you out. And I'm like, wheelchair? nonsense, I'm good, And then when I slowly sat up, I realized what the effects of this drug was, and I felt like I was born again. So here's an odd part. I felt like I had to learn things again. Like I woke up and I had to refresh. I was like, okay, what happened here? Right, I was at the hospital. Right, I'm not feeling good. So she said the surgery's done. Great. Now what? What do I do? Wheelchair. Where do I go? And so I go down, and they're saying you can get your belt, your wallet is over there, my pants, my shoes, whatever. I was like, okay. So I look down, and I see my shoes. I'm literally looking down at my shoes going, how do I put those on? Can I? Right, one goes on one foot, the other goes on the other foot. Right. I'm like slowly putting on my shoes, looking at the laces like, what are these? Oh, I tie them. I tie my shoes. How am I supposed to tie my shoes? SpongeBob status. Want to learn how to tie your shoes? So I'm looking down and I'm like, I don't know how to tie my shoes. And I look at the lady and I go, can you help me tie my shoes? She's like, yeah. But then I couldn't walk. I was stumbling. So then I was like, okay, that's what they meant with a wheelchair. So the wheelchair came. I sat down. I was loopy out of my mind, completely loopy. It took like 6 hours for me to finally get to a realistic level of like, oh, I know what's going on. So long story short, after that, they told me it was gastritis. And I was like, well, that's what I thought it was, months ago. Then a doctor gave me some really strong acid blockers. And he just said, keep taking them, you'll be good. And I'm like, okay, fine. Sure enough, I had a very bad bacterial infection because of that medicine that doctor gave me. Because I knew I wasn't supposed to take it for too long. They're really strong acid blockers. So I said, I'll take it for 30 days. That's like the maximum dose. It says online you should be taking this stuff. But I took it for 45 days because I told my doctor, I'm like, look, it's not helping. That gnawing pain, it's not helping. Like, I still feel it. I can't sleep at night. Like, I don't think these acid blockers are working. And he's like, oh, just keep taking them. I'm like, okay. Sure enough, I get the absolute worst bacteria thing from that. It was one of like the symptoms you can get, side effects. I went into the bathroom of my house and it was the worst experience of my life. There was pain. There was blood. Sorry for that image. It was so bad. I was like, what is this? Blood now? Like, what? Do I have cancer? Like, I thought, I'm like, I think I have cancer or something. I think I have some undetected type of cancer that these people are just overlooking. I had every symptom you can imagine. One of the worst ones. Just a few weeks, I think, after that, after all this shit. One day, I started feeling so dizzy. Everything is spinning. There's like white dots appearing in my vision. I'm like, what's going on? I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm having trouble breathing. My heartbeat is off. I always feel it. The muscle spasms are there. The shivering, the bloatedness, the nausea. I'm not eating. I started losing weight, losing muscle mass, like my energy, my depression. Like, we'll get into that. It was so bad. And then one day, I'm trying to sleep, and I close my eyes, and it feels like I'm in a freaking roller coaster. And I was like, whoa, I gotta open my eyes again. Like, what's going on? I try to close my eyes, and I'm seeing all these colors. In the darkness of my eyelids, I'm seeing colors and rapid movement and all these things. I'm like, wow, what's going on? So I sit up in my room, and I'm like, maybe I just need to sit up, and maybe I'll put on the TV. The TV was my escape. Movies were my escape. So I turn the lights on a little bit, and I try to put something on the TV, and I remember I look at the corner of my room, and the craziest thing happened to me. The absolute craziest thing happened to me. I don't know whether it was a panic attack, an anxiety attack. I'm not sure what it was. So I was looking at my room, and there was a moment of absolute confusion. Literally absolute confusion. I woke, and I'm not on any type of crazy medication here, you know what I mean, or drug. I'm looking at my room, and there's this insane amount of confusion of, where am I? What is this? Things are spinning. I'm like, what's going on? And the craziest feeling happened. Believe it or not, I felt like, maybe not my soul, but like the vision I had of the world, like I was taking a step back from my life and from my body. I felt like the reality of which I was living was not true. No, I wasn't tripping on acid. No, I wasn't on LSD or shrooms. Robert was, a druggie. No. You would think, right? You would think I was on shrooms or some sort of like crazy, like hallucinating drug I was on. No, I am telling you nothing. And it just slowly just happened as I sat up and I was like looking around my room. I felt like I took a step back from my reality. And what I was looking at confused me. And I was like, I for a second, I was like, this isn't real. Then my heartbeat started racing. I felt it racing. I started getting like these black kind of like cloudy things going around with my vision. And it got bad, like just fast. And my body started slowly shaking. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what's going on? What is this like? Am I where I am right now? Am I alive? Am I awake? Is this real? I'm confused at what I'm looking at. And I'm like, is this a panic attack? What is this? Because my heart was racing and my whole body was shivering. And the shivering got worse. I was going off in like some spasm. There was a moment I was like, I think I'm dying. Obviously, I'm not optimistic at this point. It's been about maybe 9 months or a year that these symptoms have gotten nothing but worse and new symptoms. So not a little glimpse of hope, right? So I'm over here like, I think I'm dying. I'm shivering. My heart is racing. I'm like, I gotta calm myself down. So I tried to do that. I tried to kind of like play it off. It got worse. I had enough. I went to the living room. I woke my parents up. They were like, what's going on? They saw how bad I was. And my mom was like, I'm taking you to the ER. And I'm like, no, maybe not. Okay, fine. She rushed me to the ER, 24/7 open, nice facility in a nice area, I go into the ER and there's no one in there besides one girl who was working behind the window. And she goes, so, well, why? Hi, guys, what? And she looks over and she goes, so, because my mom's like, my son, he's not feeling well, blah, blah, blah. And she looks over at me and she goes, so what's wrong with you? I'm literally on the floor. For some reason, I didn't want to say. I'm literally on the floor because I laid and I'm like my body's in a spasm. Literally, I'm shaking and I have my eyes covered. And I saw when I had my eyes covered, I saw really bright flashes of light. And I thought, I think this is like the transition to me dying. Like I was like, I think this is me dying. I think this is how you die. So I convinced myself like I think I'm dying, which is funny because most people who think of like, oh, if you were about to die, what was the last thing you would think about? I didn't think about loved ones. I didn't think about family. I kind of just thought of my physical being and what's about to happen. Like, where am I going? What is this? It's odd. Not like I don't care about my family or my friends or loved ones. It just, for some reason, just that just wasn't on my mind. It was all about my physical being, kind of. Of course I thought of family, friends, my loved ones. Of course I thought of them. But it was more so during that time and not that exact moment of, I think I'm about to die. It was throughout this whole time. And it was the worst experience ever. That at this point, I've taken maybe like a few trips to the ER. This one was the worst one. And the lady, I kid you not, she looked over at me. She goes, what's wrong? Like after like a few minutes, she came out and I was like, I don't know. When they went in there, they took my blood pressure and my heartbeat, really quick, and they saw it was like at 180, 190. I don't know, something really high, or was it like 220? I don't remember. It was something ridiculously high where they were like, oh my gosh, we got to get him in the thing. They get me in a room. The doctor comes. I'm over here like shaking, thinking like, I think this is it, And then he comes and he plugs something in and stabs me with that and like whatever. And I just get knocked out. Like completely knocked out. I can't remember what happened. I remember waking up the next day. Still, I don't have much memory. I faintly remember barely being able to walk as they brought me home. I spent the night there. I don't know if it was a night or 2 nights. I don't even remember. But then I came home, flopped on my bed, went to sleep again, woke up the next day. Same thing. So my days were this was my days. It was It was doctor offices, ER visits, just this. My friends who came over obviously tried to take me out. You should go out. We should have fun. We should eat. I couldn't go out and eat. I couldn't go out and do anything. When I went to, when we went to a fun place or a movie theater, anywhere, no matter what we did, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy their company. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy where I was or didn't appreciate my life. I realized because someone told me, I think you're like depressed, man. Like you look depressed. And I'm like, yeah, I probably do look depressed, but so I'm probably not in depression or something. I realized that depression came on to me. So my only escape was movies. Every night I'd put on a movie and I'd look at the movie and I'd try to envision me being that main character, whatever it was, because that was my only escape. There was nothing about my life that made me feel better, gave me hope of getting better. Because like I said, these weren't like small symptoms that came up. This was all active, 24/7. 24/7, this was happening to me. And I thought for myself, like, can I just have one breakfast where I enjoyed my meal, where I can get it down, where I don't have to force myself to eat? I was forcing myself to eat, still throwing up some stuff eventually. Everywhere I went, I couldn't engage with people. I couldn't engage in the conversations with my friends. I couldn't engage in what was going on. All I kept thinking about was, I just want to go home and put on a movie and stay in bed. I want to go home and stay in bed. I want to put on a movie. I want to go home. Like, I'm at a movie theater. I don't know how I'm going to last through this movie. I'm not going to pay attention. I'm not going to get anything out of it. I just want to go home. I feel so bad. I couldn't concentrate. If people talked a lot, like if someone's like, hey, Rob, by the way, and then they just went off on like the story, I cut them off. I'm like, I'm sorry. I feel really bad. I just want like a moment of like silence kind of thing. I became like irritable because of that. When people talked and some information my brain just couldn't like process, I was that bad. Like I tried to make it seem like I wasn't, and I threw in a few jokes when I hung out with friends and stuff like that, but it was all I kept thinking in my mind was, I just want to go home. I don't want to do anything. And you guys can relate to this if you've ever had similar symptoms like this or whatever. And it was all that. And here's what I learned about depression. I thought it was like, that's when someone is nothing but sad all the time, and they're just in misery, While that is part of it, in my opinion, I would say that's part of it. But what I learned was that it's something that comes on beyond your control. And it's not that you're just feeling misery, but sometimes, there's that, but then you plummet back into sadness. It's not just that, but it's you don't feel anything. And that's the best way I could describe it. That you were emotionless. There was no happiness. There was no content with anything. There was no determination. There was no motivation. There was no, I think I'm just going to have a relaxing day. I felt nothing. There was nothing. Like misery was a part of it. But this came on because of my sickness. I was always an optimist. I'm like, don't worry, I'm going to get better. Don't worry, we're going to eat healthy. Don't worry, this doctor will take care of it. After a year passed, and then a year and a half went by. A year and a half went by of me getting worse. Literally worse. Dealing with everything. And I'm there like, wow. I think I am depressed. Like, I think this is it. Like, because I felt nothing. I felt nothing. And while I knew, like I told myself, hey, Rob, appreciate some of the things people kind of did nice for you. Like, oh no, what's wrong? You're sick? Oh, let me get you this. It's not, while I reminded myself to appreciate all that, I was just done. And every day it was the same thing. Every day I woke up, I didn't want to wake up. When I went to bed, I was like, I don't want to wake up in the morning. I can't live like this. Like, I know this sounds extreme, but I rather if someone took like an axe to my ankles or something and chopped off my feet. That way I could physically know what was wrong with me, and then they could fix it. And I wouldn't have to deal with the internal sickness I was feeling. Because like I said, it was like that lingering whole body, mind, heart, everything was just bad. It was off. And I was like, I wish it was a stab wound. I wish it was a bullet wound. Because what I'm dealing with here, I don't want to wake up in the mornings. I don't want to wake up in the mornings because every morning I woke up, it was the same thing. It was vertigo. I have to force myself to eat. I'd wake up, the bathroom was always an issue. Always an issue. There was a day I had to use the restroom like, I think 20 times. I forced myself to eat. I'm in the kitchen table like this. And it was that hard. And I finally forced myself, and I chewed, and I swallowed. Forced myself to eat. And then it was just lay in bed. The vertigo got so bad that I couldn't get out of bed anymore at one point. I felt gravity shifts. Like my right leg was heavier than my left, and I started like leaning, and I thought I was falling. All that was going on. The dizziness, the shortness of breath, when my breathing would cut off in the middle of the night. I kept a thing next to my bed to throw up in because I threw up every night. So I got very used to it. All that just kept happening. All of it. And I think even though I was optimistic, time took its toll. It's one thing to have a few symptoms that come and go. It's another thing to deal with a few symptoms that are something you could still get by with, for a stretch of time. It's another thing to tell yourself, I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning, or I'm not, no one has done anything for me for over a year and a half. And there was nothing. There was, I have everything. I have all these reports. I have all my blood work from multiple places, all of it. Here we go. This was when they did the imaging center. This is a crazy experience. I don't know what that is. Here's my ultrasound thing. Here's this thing, abdominal, whatever. One of the funny things, one of my ER visits, I think I spent like 30 minutes there, and they gave me something like a drug to knock me out or whatever, and I went home. They charged me like $6,000. And I can't go into specifics. I can't go into every single thing that I was feeling, how some days were worse than others. There was not a glimpse of hope. So, in the end, they said I was done. Meaning, I did every test you could. Everything they could test you on, I did. All the type of blood work, ultrasounds, CT scans, testing. They did lungs. They hooked me up to this machine where I was breathing. They did everything, absolutely everything. And all of this that the doctors had and everything they went over, they said, well, I mean, that's about it. There wasn't a test they can offer me. There wasn't anything else they could decide to do. Like, hey, let's get you in on this thing. Like, that'll measure your thing and see if there's something off there. No, I was done. That was absolutely it. After about a year and something, that was it. So I sat there and I'm like, where do I go from here? And they wanted to prescribe me medicine. That was the only thing they said. And it was a lot because there's a lot of issues. My stomach, my nausea, head, vertigo, irregular heartbeat. There were medication they prescribed me that my cousin took a look at, and he was like, dude, this is what my 90-year-old dad who suffered from a heart attack and a stroke is taking. Why are they giving this to you? They gave me all these things and expected me to pop like 8 to 10 pills a morning, day, night, every day when I woke up. So I didn't tell this to my doctor. But when she left when they left the room real quick, I remember I was sitting in one of the hospitals. I said, if this is it, like if now I'm gonna live with these pills, these this horrible feeling I have, and and that's it, I don't want to live. There was nothing out of life I can get there. I won't be able to work. I wouldn't be able to. I left school because of that. I couldn't go to school and learn. I couldn't do any job. Like, hey Rob, we're gonna pay you $50 an hour. All you got to do is show up, a little ways down and clock in and out. I couldn't do it. I can't even imagine being in that setting or taking a lunch break. You know what I mean? They would let me go based on my performance and how I was, and they would see what was going on. I couldn't do that. There was nothing out of life I could possibly enjoy. I'm in worry. I'm in sickness. I just want to get to bed. And I know that every night what's going to happen and all that stuff. I was so bad off with all these symptoms and all these things happening. One day I remember I was driving and it was up on like the canyon hill, and I was like, let me just freaking toss me and my car off this hill. I was done. I was like, I can't, like, and this was again like year and a half has passed by where I've reached rock bottom, and there was things going on with me that no one could even explain. No one has even taken the first step to cure. There was not a single medicine I took that made me feel better. I tried home remedies. I tried, teas and greens and, stuff that you could just kind of regularly buy and like whatever. There was nothing. And I was done. I know how that sounds. And I always thought of myself, I was like, Rob, like, this is dialogue within myself, me telling myself, you're the strongest person I know. You're virtuous. You're proud of who you are. You were always, you always felt blessed with the life you had. You can't just like quit. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you, it got that bad. It was so bad that I was literally at the point where I'm like, well, I don't have an option. And one thing I want to tell you guys, if you're suffering from anything, as bad as I was, here's what kept me going. What kept me going was really me telling myself, you know what, Rob, like, it could be worse. That's what kept me going. I was like, there are people out there who have it worse than you. There are people out there who've, lost families. They're living with, disabilities. I tried to think of so many scenarios, not to just make myself feel better, but look at the reality of it that, look, there are so many people worse off. They're strong enough. They're going, they're carrying on. And I was like, but there were times that were tough when I told myself, like, I asked myself and I said, what's worse than this? I didn't want to deal with any of it anymore. That's why I was like, if someone chopped off my legs and I was in a wheelchair, I was like, it's not that much worse. What will that do? I was already so bad. I was already feeling so crummy. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to do anything. Nothing gave me a shred of a different emotion than I'm done with this. I don't want to. I feel horrible. I'm feeling horrible 24/7 for the past year and a half. And the doctor said, I'm done. There's no more tests they can do. They can only prescribe me the medication that I just took and brought home and whatever. None of it helped. I went nowhere. But in the end of all of that, I still said, there's someone out there who has it worse. There's someone out there who is probably dealing with worse. I can't imagine what it would be, and I don't want to imagine it, but I just kept telling myself, there's an end to everything. There could be an end to this sickness. I don't even know what happened, which is funny because no doctor told me specifically what it was or what I was feeling, or it could be this or it could be that. The bottom line was like, I didn't know and no one else knew. I didn't know how it started. I didn't know what happened, and the funny part about that is like when I was out in public, I'm watching some people, they're eating McDonald's, they're chugging back beers, they're smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day. They're extremely overweight, and while they obviously have health issues of their own, they don't have the greatest life when they go home and greatest health and all that stuff. But I'm looking at them doing all that, and I know that they're feeling way better than I am. And I'm looking at that going, why? What did I do for this to happen as far as health-wise? Was I not watching over my body? Was I not looking at the things I ate? No, I did the exact opposite. But I fell in this like abyss. So maybe about 5 to 6 months out of the year and a half, technically 2 years, were spent just in complete depression. I didn't feel anything for anything. You're existing. That's the best way I could put it. I was just existing. For what reason I didn't know. Was I going to get better? It seemed like absolutely not. This is it. Like nothing helped me, not even with one single symptom. I couldn't leave my house because I had to deal with so many symptoms that it was just it wasn't doable. If you guys could like name the symptom, I had it. Of course, I thought, why me? Why did this happen? What was this supposed to teach me? Was it about strength? Was it that I can overcome it? Which I did, and we'll get into that, but it took me about another year to a year and a half of recovery with different treatments I was doing It was more along the lines of Chinese medicine and not Western medicine. We'll get into that in another video. This is kind of really long. I didn't expect to go on this long, but I'm here to tell you, as bad as things might seem, as horrible as your life might be, as bad as you're feeling, whether you have symptoms or you're dealing with simple things like, weight loss and you can't achieve it, headaches throughout the day, stress, depression, all that, I feel like there is an end to it. And a lot of people don't know. This is the first time I came out talking about the severity of it, how I feel, because I didn't post Facebook posts about it. I didn't Instagram myself in the hospitals and the ER rooms and, send prayers my way or really talk about it. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want people to, I guess I was so selfless that I didn't want people to do things out of their way for me. Like, oh, Rob's feeling sick. Yeah, we got to pull the car over. I didn't want that. So I didn't want to put that onto the people around me. So because of that, I learned, and I'm telling you, there's an end to it. Grab onto that last bit of hope you have, not for anyone else but yourself. You can do it. You can do it. I went through it for a very long time, and you can do it. I didn't tell people the severity of this. I didn't talk about it because, like I said, I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want any of that stuff. This is the first time I openly came out talking about all of it, because there were times where I tried to hide it. I had friends that I visited or friends that came over that said, like, how you doing? And I said, not well, I've been kind of sick. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Is that a cold? Do you have a fever? And I was like, I wish I had a cold. I wish I had a cold, But I didn't tell them. I didn't tell them about the years of, I didn't tell them about, I just said, I'm just dealing with some medical issues. A lot of people said, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you get well real soon. I loved hearing those words. And they're like, yeah, that's funny you said that because, I was actually sick. I've been sick for 3 weeks. And they're like, it's been so long. They're complaining. They have the right to, but it's just funny, to me, here I am, I've been sick for a year and a half with the worst things you can imagine, thinking about just like ending it all at this point. And my friends and some of my acquaintances, they're like, yeah, man, he's like, I feel you. I've been sick for 3 weeks. And then, other friends that joined in the conversation, wow, what the heck? Why 3 weeks? And they're like, yeah, dude, I couldn't work. Like, I had to take off time from work. I had to do this. Like, I finally got better, though. Just, like, took a couple of treatments for that thing. Or, like, their doctor's appointment was a week too long, something. And I was like, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I was like, but, I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to get better. They're like, oh, awesome, Rob. Yeah, like, how long have you been sick? Oh, well, a while now, Just not really getting into it, not really getting into that. Seeing people all over Facebook, like, they'll break a nail and they want people to send prayers their way and they'll post about it and all these things. And I'm just like, it's really something, like, what one person's sickness can be and how they deal with it and how differently it feels towards another person. Some people take symptoms totally different ways, But if I had to say, I dealt with it with an immense amount of strength. I can't believe I am functioning. I wasn't functioning. So I can't believe I'm functioning right now. What it has taught me, we can go over it in a part 2. I appreciate the smallest things in life. There's nothing I love more than a good meal right now. To go out with a friend, to look at the day's sky, to have a nice meal and be like, wow, what a beautiful world we live in. What delicious food I have. I am so blessed. Like, I am so blessed. I'm the luckiest kid alive. I have the greatest life. That's how I feel. I didn't need that I didn't need that sickness to teach me that. But it definitely opened my eyes of, I thought I had it good before. I am the most blessed. I am blessed. It was one journey. Those years, like, they're a blur to me. They're all a blur to me because it was all negative. I'm sorry, but it was. My birthdays, the New Year's, the holidays, it's just, I really tried to hang on to those bits. And that was what it was. I said, my hope was there's going to be these times that are going to come in the future again. My birthday, Christmas time that I love so much, and all these things. There's going to be a time where I'm going to enjoy these days. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be able to be functioning again and live life just day by day without feeling so horrible. It's going to come. I latched onto that hope. Other people have it worse. I need to be as strong as they are. I latched onto all of it and finally plowed through. Even my recovery took long, another about a year and a half till I really bounced back to a functional life. I still have little symptoms here and there that I'm trying to correct, nothing like before, but I think in total it's been a span of maybe about 4 years, 3 to 4 years was that whole span. Thank you guys for watching, listening. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. Hopefully I inspired a few people. Don't take your health for granted. Your health is so important. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about the future. I didn't care about anything. My bank account could have been minus $100,000 that I owed. I didn't care as long as I got better. Nothing else mattered besides that because I was that bad. I'll make a part 2 of how I got better, what helped me get better, and what I learned throughout that whole experience, and how I live my life differently now than I did before I got sick. That's going to be covered in part 2. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was one heck of a video. I'll see you on my next one. If I bored you to death, I'm sorry. Go check out the comedy stuff. I'll be doing some Guitar Hero and Twitch stuff as well. I love you guys. Thanks for all the support, sticking by me. I'll see you on my next video.